Thank you. So now we would like to open up for questions for anyone on the panel. Yes?
My name is Bogdan Oreshkevich. This is to Mr. Chubarev. You know, most of the people in this audience are not in government, they're not in big foundations. How can the individuals here in this room help the Crimean Tatar people?
Ви обираєте тих, хто призначає уряд, ви обираєте президента, користуєтесь бюлетенем.
You elect those who make decisions. You elect the president.
Справа в тому, що чи будуть великі держави знаходити між собою згоду, нехтуючи інтересами малих держав, залежить від лідерів, яких обирає народ.
It is up to the leaders who are elected by the people whether big countries will be sacrificing smaller countries for the sake of coming to a solution. That's really up to you.
Я сподіваюся, не буде втручання в внутрішні справи Сполучених Штатів Америки, але ми стояли на Майдані поруч з сенатором Маккейном. Я знаю, що якщо від нього залежало, ми б вже мали сьогодні зброю.
I hope that there will be no interference within the internal matters of the United States. I was standing on the Maidan hand to hand with Senator McCain, and I'm sure if it was up to him, then Ukraine would have had weapons already.
Anybody else that hasn't asked a question yet? Maybe, perhaps? Yes? If you could very loudly.
I'll just yell-ish. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. This is a question for Dr. Yuri. You talked a lot about the denigration of culture through language, and we tend to, as an audience, react in asking questions about how we can save a dying culture through physical means, like military means and so on. And I was wondering more along the lines of, do you have any mechanisms, or could you propose any mechanisms that would help preserve the Ukrainian language? Because what's really the point of saving a nation if everyone in there has no idea of the culture that preceded that nation?
Yes, I have a recipe for that. And that recipe has been tested in all other countries. Ukraine is really an exception. Probably Belarus is another one. Create a space for Ukrainian language where it is not interfered with aggressively, coercively, every step of the way by Russian language, so that it starts finally to self-reproduce, as does English in its territory of distribution, French, Polish, or Russian. And that way, you're not afraid that if you leave your child in front of a television, you'll end up having a child speaking something that is not a language. So basically, Ukraine has to follow the pattern of other countries that are not colonies of Russia, including Russia. This is a rare case when I say you can follow how Russians protect their own language. Probably not by such coercive means. I don't believe in that. Probably any democratic country of Europe. You don't see two languages mixed in Catalonia in Spain. In Belgium, you don't see programs spoken together in French and Valonian or Flemish. You don't see in Puerto Rico, I paid attention to that, Spanish mixed together with English. That's not practiced. You don't see the same thing in Quebec. Ukraine stands out as the only country doing that to the detriment of its own culture, not to say even nothing of the language, culture itself. It's very simple.
Я хочу цю тему продовжити.
I'd like to elaborate on that.
У У нас ситуація була взагалі катастрофою по порівнянню з українцями. Нас всього 300 тисяч кримських татар. І ми 50 років не мали школи.
Comparing to Ukrainians, our situation was even more catastrophic. We hadn't had schools and our language in dozens of years.
Ми взяли за приклад інший народ, ніж росіяни. Ми взяли євреїв.
We took Jewish as an example.
І сказали, якщо вони втратили більше 1000 років і вони відновили, чому ми не можемо відновитися?
And we said if they were able to restore their language after not having it for a century, then why would we be an exception?
За 4-5 років ми створили найкращий телевізійний канал в Криму. Найкращий.
Within a matter of 4 or 5 years, we were able to establish one of the best television channels in Europe.
Ми його мовили 3 мовами. Російською, українською, кримсько-татарською.
This channel was broadcasted in 3 languages, Ukrainian, Russian, and Crimean Tatar.
Ми знали про те, що говорить Юрій. Ми створили дитячий канал.
We know what Yuri was talking about, and we established a children's channel.
І за 4-5 років ми відчули велику різницю. Ми побачили, як люди хочуть, і вони вчаться.
In 4 or 5 years, we witnessed a big difference that we were able to make. That we saw that people were eager to start to speak their own language and study it.
З 1 квітня ці канали не працюють, потім не закриті.
Hearing from the 1st of April this year, those channels are no longer broadcasting. They had been shut down by Putin.
І скажіть мені, яке в мене відношення чи справа до того противоборства між США, Сполученими Штатами, Росією? Я знаю, хто мені заборонив говорити. Путін.
Please tell me, what do I have to do with all these issues between Russia and the West? I do not care. I know who insulted me. I know what's the source of my problem.
In the back. I have a question about the India. My name is Ivana Village, and what's your take? We know that people call in the media and politicians call what's going on in Donbass, call it a crisis, where legally speaking, it fits the definition of a war. So what's your take on what exactly is happening in Crimea, war versus crisis, and what do you think is going to be an outcome, and what's the solution for Ukraine?
Yeah.
Donbass?
Well, I don't have any solution. If I had a solution that could become president of the United States or Ukraine. So I don't have solutions. But I can tell you this. I just came back from Ukraine. I told the story about told many Ukrainians about the story, and they got very interested. To me, what Putin has been doing in the Donbass, or initially in Crimea, is not new. The name hybrid war, that's nothing at all. It seems to me that he's taking rules of playbook by Stalin. Stalin always, advocated the Soviet Union was a peace-loving country, and so on. Of course, he invaded Poland and Finland, so it was wrong, but even before that, he was invading China in 1929 to protect Soviet colonial rules. In the same year, he invaded Afghanistan under the guise of, he sent his own forces to Afghanistan under the guise of local Afghan fighters in order to hide his intention, his deployment of military forces. He did the same in Xinjiang, Chinese Turkestan, in order to protect or support the Chinese government against the Uyghur Muslim rebels. Ostensibly because he said to protect the area from the influence of Japanese imperialism in 1933, 34. He did the same again in 1937, sent to Kyrgyz, the Kazakhs, masking them as Chinese soldiers. So here, lot of it. We know only few, but there were, certainly. We still don't know everything, but there are many cases of what Russians call Maskarov or Moskvanya Ukrainsky, and the camouflage, obfuscation, all these operations, they were plenty, understand. And Putin knows, clearly is familiar with the operations, and then of course he's trying to deceive or misinform the West, and we are not taking a clear stand. This is, to me, it's patently clear that Hitler, Putin using his military forces, but somehow we don't seem to take a strong stand. This is patently clear that some of my own colleagues who are academics, they don't seem to get it. So I'm very disappointed. But to me, there's nothing surprising to what Putin has been doing in Crimea and Eastern Ukraine.
We're very sorry, but we've run out of time. We would like to thank our speakers once again. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone that came. You guys were a very diverse audience. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your time. If you would like, the reception is still open if you would like to get something to eat. And thank you for coming. And once again, thank you to the speakers. Дякую.